Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Real Fellas Talk Sports. I'm David Burnett, your host for tonight, joined by the fellas. Let me introduce the fellas. Chuck Snowden in Washington, D.C. Chuck, how are you?
I'm doing wonderful, David. It seems like I haven't seen you guys in a little bit of time. It's just good to see you all, and can't wait to get on to the show. I just got back from your hometown of Indianapolis, Indiana, and Bloomington, and boy, was it cold there, David. Wow.
It's got to be 0 degrees today. Larry Abels, also Washington, D.C.'s voice of reason. How you doing, Larry?
I'm good, David. How about yourself?
I'm doing great in Caitlin, Indiana. Anyway, a lot of football to discuss. Most of the show will be NFL and college football, and I don't think anybody's going to mind that at all. First, talk about the first football game we're going to talk about. It kind of there's a horrible pretext to this game. The Rams and the Vikings game had to be moved to Arizona. The fires outside of LA, very horrible, causing the Rams to lose their home field advantage. But the Rams defeated the Vikings at Arizona 27-9. Let me start with you, Larry. Your thoughts about that game. How much do you think the fires affected the game?
You know, it's really kind of hard to tell. And if I would look at it, it seemed like it didn't affect them at all. But I heard, post-game interviews with the players, and they were happy to get their families there. They were able to establish a certain level of comfort for themselves, but they didn't forget about their community, and they wanted to represent well for their community. So they looked like they were ready to play, regardless of the conditions they had to face the week before.
Chuck, your thoughts about the fire affecting the game being a home game technically for the Rams, but playing in Arizona. Do you think it affected the game?
So first of all, shout out to the folks in California, and our prayers are with all of them out there. Those fires have been absolutely horrific. So shout out to that. I thought that the Rams responded. I think the thing about the Rams, honestly, they got a heck of a coach. Their head coach he's one of the best in the business. And that team had some injuries early on. They came on as the end of the year unfolded and just knows what he's doing. He's got a great quarterback in Stafford. I was very impressed with that win. And, of course, Donald, his last two games, both the last game of the regular season and this first playoff game, he just wasn't sharp at all. Bless his heart.
Larry, let me ask you, Chuck just mentioned Sam Darnold, the standout quarterback, at least this year with the Vikings. He was probably the biggest loser of the game, even more so than the team itself. What do you think, Larry?
I'm not sure, because I'm not really sure anybody was going to pay him that much. I don't even think the Vikings would have done that. I think most people wanted to see him do it again, and certainly didn't help himself. So in one sense, he looks bad right now, but when you consider his complete body of work, I think he had a pretty decent season. Of course, having the receivers he has in Minnesota certainly helps out a lot. I'm not sure if he'll be – I think some team will probably sign him because there's a lack of quarterbacks out there, but I don't think he's getting a real super big contract.
Does Minnesota now go with the rookie who was hurt, missed the whole season? Do they go with the rookie next season and let Sam Darnold go? And let me let you continue with that thought, Larry.
I was thinking they were going to go with the rookie anyway. I thought Sam Darnold might have earned a franchise tag from them, which would have given them a significant amount of money. I'm not sure they'll do that now.
Chuck, your thoughts?
Well, they were 14-3. They were 14-3, and they lost to a great Detroit Lions game, the last game of the season. I think they are going to franchise him. I think he will be their starting quarterback next year, and give J.J. McCarthy an opportunity to learn and continue to grow. And if he falters, and I'm talking about Sam, then you could stick J.J. in there. But I think Sam will be back as their quarterback next year. I really do.
You know, the only thing I can think about with Minnesota is it always seems that Minnesota fades in the end. Remember about 20 some years ago when Minnesota led by Randall Cunningham, I think they lost only 2 games. They were one of the strongest teams in the league. And when it came to the playoffs, it just didn't deliver. And they've been to the Super Bowl 4 times and lost 4 times. Is there a jinx surrounding the Minnesota Vikings? Chuck, let me start with you.
Well, that's a good question. You summed it up pretty good, David. I don't know. Maybe there is a jinx, or maybe they're pretty good to get to a Super Bowl 4 times, or put themselves in a position to get into the playoffs and just fall a little bit short. So I don't know. I don't know if there's a jinx, but boy, you did sum that up really good.
Larry, last thoughts on the Minnesota Vikings.
I don't buy any jinxes. I mean, they just lost against a team that was better prepared that day. The one thing that I wanted to just let y'all know about the quarterbacks they also signed Daniel Jones, so he's on their roster. If they want to use Daniel Jones as a bridge, they already have him on their roster. That's why I was thinking maybe Sam Darnold may not be back.
Well, I know Daniel Jones is Chuck's favorite quarterback, and Chuck has expressed that through the years. Anyway, I'm just kidding.
I mean, I was right about it. I'm sorry.
All right, next game. Buffalo destroys Denver 31-7. And Chuck, your thoughts about Buffalo?
I have to eat crow. I have to eat crow big time. It was my upset pick of the week. I thought Denver would go in there and beat Buffalo. And quite frankly, it was 10-7. Denver was setting up for a field goal, kicked the field goal right before the half, thinking it was going to go in at 10-10. He missed the field goal, and it was all Buffalo in the second half. And shout out to Buffalo. The running back Cook was tough. Allen was tough. Buffalo's a tough place to win in terms of teams who come in that environment. They are built for this time of year.
Larry, your thoughts on that game?
Went pretty much like I expected. You know, Buffalo, Baltimore, and Kansas City are the class of that conference. So Buffalo came in prepared to play. San Diego, kind of an upstart, but they came up against some big boys and got smacked down.
Okay.
Can't wait for the game this week.
Oh, big one. Huge. Maybe the game of the year.
Yeah.
Well, we look forward to that one. Texans manhandled the Chargers. And let me just say this. Justin Herbert, the franchise quarterback of the Chargers, the Los Angeles Chargers, didn't show very much at all. 4 interceptions. Larry, your thoughts on the Texans beating the Chargers? Jim Harbaugh is supposed to resuscitate the Chargers. Not quite. Maybe they've got a year to go. Larry, your thoughts?
Yeah, that was an interesting game. I thought the Texans were playing horribly at first. I thought C.J. Stroud was off target on everything. And all of a sudden, they got it together, and Herbert was off target on everything. Matter of fact, Herbert threw more interceptions in this game than he's thrown all year. Texans just looked ready for this game, and they played better. That's simple.
Chuck.
We got to use the word fraud. I mean, they paid that guy $50-some million a year, too. He signed a big contract. And that was terrible, man. That was a terrible performance. Look, the Texans didn't have Diggs. They didn't have the wide receiver Dell. They were playing horrible at the end of the season. They even got off to a 6-0 start. And it was just he was throwing the football all over the field. So I was really disappointed with the Chargers. They were my dark horse. We asked that question maybe 5-6 weeks ago. What team do we think could be a dark horse and sneak into the playoffs and so forth? I said the Chargers. I thought they were going to beat the Texans, and that was horrible.
Now, is it too early to make an assessment of the Chargers at this point? Jim Harbaugh having to install his system, which is a lot of effective running. Justin Herbert, who has been touted for the last 3-4 years as the next great thing. Toned his play down. Only 3 interceptions in the regular season, even though 4 interceptions in the playoff game. Does San Diego, the Los Angeles Chargers, excuse me, do they have a chance to rebound? And is Jim Harbaugh going to make the team better? Let me start with you, Chuck.
I absolutely think so. I think they're ahead of schedule right now. I thought they had a good season. They made the playoffs, and they too got affected by the, by the fires. Right? They're playing. Their home stadium is in California as well, and they had the fires going on there too. So I think they were ahead of schedule. I think Harbaugh's been really good for them, and I think they will be a team to watch. Although I hope that quarterback is legit. We'll find out in the next year or two.
Larry.
I kind of agree with Chuck there, ahead of schedule. I was never really sold on them, even though I know a lot of people on TV were. And I look at them as being ahead of schedule. And they had a pretty decent year, and the quarterback had a good year. I mean, I can't really, hey, Phyllis, how you doing?
Hey, Phyllis, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Phyllis.
Three interceptions, that's very, very good. What's up, Greg?
Hey, what's up, Gregory? 4 interceptions. Oh, yeah, 3 interceptions.
Yeah, 3 the whole season. That's I can't take anything away from them. Yeah. But I don't think they, I think they probably went as far as they, as should have been expected.
Right.
What about the Texans? The Texans really kind of crept into the final 4 or 5 games of the season. They didn't look strong. CJ Stroud, not top notch. But they won effectively and won big. Do they have a chance to kind of turn things around? How do we look at the Texans at this point?
I don't think so. I don't think the Texans, I think you said it right. I think they stumbled in. I think that conference that they're in is not the strongest conference in football. And they don't have either of their wide receivers. They're both starting wide receivers are out. And I think Stroud was a little bit down this year compared to his rookie season. Their defense is still tough. That one linebacker is back with them after being suspended. But no, I think the Chiefs will win the next game.
Larry.
Yeah, if you're talking about the next game, I expect Kansas City to win. But when I look at them this year, Collins has come back, Chuck. Their number 1 receiver came back a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, he did? Okay.
Yeah. But they missed him and Diggs for a number of weeks on the running back. Mixon was hurt. And I think that's bound to impact any quarterback's performance when you have 3 of your main people that you give the ball to out. The thing about them, let's not forget, just a couple of years ago, 2 years in a row, they won like 2 games. So they had a great season last year, and I think they still hung in there this year. So I think they're on the right track. I think their coach is doing a good job, but they're not quite ready. They probably had the best opponent they could face last week for their purposes, and stepping up in class this week.
Let's move to a game that I was kind of surprised by. Philadelphia defeating Green Bay 22-10, and it looked like Green Bay was off kilter from the beginning. And my guy Jordan Love, 3 interceptions. Jalen Hurts, the quarterback for Philly, shaking off a concussion and played decently. Let me start with you, Larry. Your thoughts about Philadelphia beating Green Bay. Was that expected? Philadelphia's been strong all season long, irrespective of how the coaches responded. Your thoughts?
I think Philadelphia has a very good team. It didn't surprise me that they won the game, but it surprised me how easily they won the game. I thought Green Bay would put up more of a battle, but anytime you throw a number of interceptions, that's going to, except for when Washington plays Philadelphia. When you turn the ball over against Philly, you're going to have a rough time.
Chuck.
Well, look, Jordan Love played really, really well in the playoffs last year against Dallas, and even in the next game after that against the 49ers, I think. But the reality is, as I said about Herbert, Jordan, that was a horrible, horrible game. And you too signed a big, I know, I go with the money. You too signed one of those $50-some million a year.
Yeah, yes, he did.
And you didn't perform like that. And I'm not really sure he is that guy yet. I'm not sure he's that guy.
Chuck. He is that guy.
Sure. I'm not sure yet.
I hear you. All right. Let's talk about a team that we all kind of care about. I kind of care about the Washington Commanders. I used to live in that town for many, many years. The Commanders beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 23-20 on a doink field goal. Jaden Daniels, the superstar rookie quarterback, playing like a vet. And let me start with you, Chuck. Your thoughts about that game and the Commanders?
Well, I think he has that it factor, that magic, the reverse of jinx, or whatever that. Because look, man, they've won their last 5 games. And Larry will correct me, where on the last play of the game, 5 weeks in a row, and so they're on a bit of a run. He never looks flustered. He's so mature. I don't know how loaded we are, quite honestly, but what a win, what a game. I'll take it. And first and goal at the 1 yard line, I thought we didn't get in, and I thought that was going to be a problem. And Tampa, fumbled on the next series. We got it back and scored, and I thought that was huge.
Larry, your thoughts?
I thought Tampa totally dominated the game and still lost. I mean, I'm glad time worked out where Washington got the ball and had that last drive. Chuck, I don't know if it's 5 games in a row. You might be right, but I know they have 6 wins this year that happened within the last 10 seconds of the game or overtime, which normally doesn't go Washington's way.
One of them broke Chicago. I think when we had the Hail Mary, I don't think Chicago ever was.
They never recovered.
They recovered.
Never recovered.
Another game that they seem to be outplayed in. Somehow they walked away with a win. But, I think Washington's coaching staff gets the most out of those guys.
They do.
And they complement offense and defense. It seems like everybody is doing just enough. I guess they'll face the ultimate test this week, so we'll see.
Now, Larry, go. No, let me say this, and I'll get to you, Chuck. Larry, you mentioned the close games that Washington won this season, 6 or 7 games that they won in the last minutes of the game or in overtime.
10 seconds.
What's the common factor? One person, Jaden Daniels. Let me start with you, Chuck. Jaden Daniels, let's evaluate who will probably be the rookie of the year. What kind of a player is he for the Washington Commanders?
Special, man. He's so special. Look, he only had 30 yards rushing in that game against Tampa, but he had a big run to get a first down on a drive late in the game when we had to have it. And by the way, on 4th downs, I think Washington might lead the league in pulling off fourth down plays and so forth. So he's just special. He's mature. He doesn't get flustered. And when the ball hits the goalpost and falls in, get that horseshoe out your pocket, man. I mean, the heck of a win. Just a wonderful win for us.
Larry, let's sum up Washington. I know, again, I always call you the voice of reason. You'll probably sum this up better than any of us anyway. Go ahead.
Well, Chuck, I agree with you with that doink, but that still pales to the Chicago game to me.
Oh, my God. It's crazy.
But everybody jumps up for the ball except for one person, and it just comes right to him. I mean, quarterback, I think, is doing a good job. Sometimes I don't like the play calling. I want them to throw the ball downfield a little more. Tampa did a good job of loading the box, taking away the run, his running as well as the running backs, and they were almost daring him to throw. I think he can throw downfield. They started off early in the game throwing a lot to McLaurin, and they kind of went away from it. But I want them to throw the ball downfield. I think that he can, if they're playing their best, they can hang in there with Detroit. I just don't want them to fall too far behind.
Now let's keep in mind, this is Washington's first playoff win in 20 years. 20 years. The stench, the smell, the ignorance, the foolishness, I
think there's even talk, and again, Larry, correct me if I'm wrong. There's even some talk. They're getting ready to demolish RFK, which again is the start of perhaps building a brand new stadium on that spot. I know it's years out, but how sweet would that be to put a brand new, beautiful stadium in the same spot as RFK?
The sad thing is that the Washington football team plays just outside of the district in Maryland. the team should be playing their home games in the District of Columbia. And let's hope that does happen.
I don't have a problem with Prince George's County.
Well, I understand all of us kind of lived on the fringe of Washington, D.C., but we're DC proud. Anyway, coming up on Saturday, the Houston Texans against the Kansas City Chiefs. Let's get into prediction mode. Larry Abels, Kansas City, do they continue their winning streak, or does Houston upset them?
I think Kansas City is going to win, but it might not be as easy as they think. They haven't really played in 2 weeks. They're regulars, and I always think there's a little bit of game speed that you got to get used to, lose some of your competitive edge. But I think has been their pattern this year. When they need to do it toward the end of the game, they'll be able to pull it off.
Okay, Chuck, Kansas City or Houston?
I think Kansas City wins. Look, man, they've tested their record. The record is what it is. I think the Texans really did get lucky last week, even though they deserved the win in terms of the fact the Chargers did not play well. So I think the Texans got a bonus just to be here, and I think Kansas City wins this game. I agree with Greg. I think they win. I don't know if it's a squeak, but they'll win.
I'm not so sure.
Well, okay.
Let me be the naysayer here. Kansas City is obviously two-time defending NFL champions, 3 Super Bowl championships in 6 seasons, 5 seasons. I think this is a game they're going to get upset by the Houston Texans. Now, next week, I'm going to say I was right.
Okay.
Here's what I'll leave you with. You might think Jaden Daniels is a magician. Patrick Mahomes is an accomplished magician.
Oh, he absolutely is. I'm not going to deny Patrick Mahomes. He has been special ever since he got the chance to start.
And they're tough in that. And they're tough in that stadium. They're tough in that stadium. It's hard to beat them with that crowd and that home field. And so we'll see, David.
Absolutely. I'm not going to sit up here and kid anybody. Kansas City is a champion team. They know how to win. They have the best coach in football. And by the way, he does great commercials. Andy Reid, I didn't know he was that funny. I didn't know. All right. Now let's talk about our Commanders against the Detroit Lions. The Lions have been roaring ever since the first game of the season when they played Kansas City and should have beaten Kansas City then. Can the Commanders beat the Lions? Chuck?
I think the buck stops here, unfortunately. Look, I'm going to be rooting for them. Don't get me wrong, but I can't pick them to beat the Lions in Detroit. By the way, if I had a voice, hey, thanks, Thomas, for joining us. We appreciate that.
Hey, Thomas, how you doing?
If I had a vote, I'd vote Dan Campbell, Coach of the Year, quite frankly. What he's done with Detroit, with all the injuries and that big game over the Vikings at the end of the season, Detroit has installed that culture. I just don't see how Washington can go into Detroit and win this game. I don't.
Larry?
This is how Washington has a chance to win. They'll have to score, and they'll have to control the ball, kind of like what they did against a lot of teams. If their offense can have long drives, and that's going to be a challenge, but with the some people say the injuries that Detroit has, Detroit's defensive coordinator, what's his name? Is it Glenn?
Aaron Glenn.
Yes,
Glenn.
He has done. He can't be the coach of the year, but I think he's done a masterful job. But I'm hoping Washington can control the ball long enough to keep Washington's defense off the field, because Detroit's offense is so explosive. So I guess what I'm trying to say, but Washington can avoid the number of 3 and outs, and they can hold the ball for a while and put some points on the board. They'll have a chance.
Well, let me say this about Detroit. Detroit is certainly the sentimental favorite to win the Super Bowl, even over Kansas City. Everybody would like to see it. But let me bring this out, this fact. Sorry about this, Detroit. A fact. It's been 58 years. No, more is it no, is my math is not right. It's been almost 66 years since they last won anything. And that was before the Super Bowl. 66 years. 1957 is when
Wow.
the Detroit Lions last won an NFL
David,
championship.
none of their players were born then, so
No, we were barely born.
not even. Most of them weren't even born in the 80s. So recent time, those times don't even matter.
The smell of
They're
Detroit.
kicking butt this year.
I'm hoping.
And last
Detroit,
year.
I hope Detroit can continue to win. But I'm really wanting Washington to beat Detroit this time.
I do too. I do too, but I can't pick it to beat Detroit.
I look at it like this, using a metaphor. We're playing with house money here in Washington.
Right.
Yeah.
Just
Absolutely.
like the Texans. Just like the Texans.
But if we were using smart money, no.
Detroit has shown that they are pretty strong, and their coach, by the way, a defensive-minded coach. I hate this defensive-minded versus offensive-minded. Dan Campbell is a coach of the entire freaking team, and he has inspired both sides of the football for Detroit.
100% agree.
All right.
By the way, he was 3-13 his first year.
But they gave him a chance.
No, that's my point.
They gave him a chance.
Right.
He inspired that franchise. All right, Sunday, the game: Lamar Jackson versus Josh Allen. Actually, Baltimore versus Buffalo in Buffalo. Okay, Larry, who wins that game?
Both teams have quarterbacks that are dynamic, that can do a lot of things. Both teams have good running backs, but one team has a great running back. If Baltimore plays their best, and a lot of time I've noticed when they've given Derrick Henry the ball enough, they play their best. I think they'll win that game.
Okay.
But I'm looking forward to this game.
All right. Chuck.
Well, look, Derrick had 185 yards rushing last week. I think they're going to feed him a lot. By the way, Lamar had 85 yards rushing. I mean, and by the way, they say Zay, their missing receiver, who was a heck of a playmaker for them, may be back for this game. But Buffalo is tough in Buffalo. The Mafia will be out. The Buffalo Mafia, as they're called. It is going to be a hell of a game. And I can't wait to see it. It's the game it might be the game of the year.
All right.
One
Keep
thing
in
I
mind.
to add, David.
No, go ahead, Larry.
Baltimore seems to have fixed their problems on defense. They look like the old Baltimore Ravens, because earlier this year they were dependent upon their offense to outscore everybody. The last 5 or 6 games, they look very good on defense.
Along with the kicker. The kicker over the last 4 or 5 years, he's been better as well. And because I thought they should have released him halfway through the season.
I'm shocked he's still there.
Right. So he's been better. And look, we got to also mention, in terms of those two dynamic quarterbacks, I don't know how you guys come down, but the season's now over. David, who would be your MVP?
You put me on the spot here.
Yes,
I think this could be something that happened about 20 years ago when Peyton Manning and Steve McNair tied for MVP. But right now, I would say Lamar Jackson should have the edge. Now, keep in mind, everybody who was watching that game, and all of us will be watching that game, Baltimore crushed Buffalo earlier this season. They crushed them.
Yeah, 35-10.
I don't know how much that plays. I think that game was in Baltimore. This game is in Buffalo. It's the playoffs. Buffalo has shown that they're a very strong playoff team. I don't know. It's going to be fun.
Who'd you give the MVP nod to?
I got to go with Lamar Jackson. Even though I wouldn't cry if the other guy got it. I mean, I think he's very good. And David pointed out something. One time it was a tie. I'm going to assume that was by happenstance, but I wouldn't. I think if you couldn't make a decision between those two and a voted a tie, I'd be okay with that. But I expect Lamar Jackson to win it.
I do too.
Uh,
We
well,
talked
keep in
about this
mind, Lamar
before.
Jackson was first team All Pro this season for the NFL.
100%. I saw that.
First team. All right. Rams versus the Eagles. The Rams are playing spiritual football. The Eagles with a crazy coach, crazy as a fox. Who wins that game? Chuck.
I think the Eagles win. It was good to see Hurts back last week and back, not even afraid. He ran the ball 6 or 7 times. I think, look, I believe that the Eagles, given the injuries with the Lions, I think they've got the most talent in the NFC. I do. And I think they'll be in the Super Bowl. So I'm picking the Eagles to beat the Rams. Not easy, but they're going to beat the Rams.
Chuck. Larry.
I expect Philadelphia to win. I'm not really sold on Hurts as much as a lot of people. I think he's had one real good year, but they have Barkley back there, and they do have some receivers. So if I wasn't particularly impressed with his passing last week. I think Brown only got one target, but I expect them to open it up a little more, get Brown the ball, and when they get Brown the ball and give Barkley the ball, I think they'll win that game pretty easy.
Well, he was reading his book, Larry, so he didn't really have time to.
And that book is selling like hotcakes now.
I thought that was a little unusual.
Really? You do?
Everything about the Eagles is a little unusual. We'll see if they can pull it off, but they are recent Super Bowl winners. It hadn't been that long. 4 or 5 seasons ago, they won the Super Bowl. All right. So I think the Rams are going to win.
Wow.
No,
I'm being contrary, but you know me.
Yeah, you got Houston and Los Angeles.
Yeah, you're out there on the ledge on 2 of them, right?
Well, I've fallen off the ledge
Washington
many
and
times.
Detroit? Who's going to win Washington and Detroit?
Washington.
Okay.
You're way out
right
there.
now. I'm just talking. Gotta have some fun on this show.
Yes,
all right. Okay, so we've resolved that. Let's look at some college football. On Monday, the national championship will be played. But let's first quickly examine what happened in the games leading up to the national championship game on Monday. Notre Dame wins in a squeaker over Penn State. What do you think, Chuck? How did they do it?
I thought they did it with, I don't know, how should I put this? So Franklin has had a good year. He did win a couple of games in the playoffs. He just can't get that team over the top. He just can't. And I don't know that his team is not more talented than Notre Dame. I just don't think they're creative enough on offense and so forth. And by the way, this Notre Dame coach is turning out to be one of the high-rising young
Marcus Freeman
quarterbacks to keep an eye on, quite frankly. So I just think coaching had a big part of this. And shout out to Notre Dame.
All right, Larry.
I was happy to finally see that. I was watching the previous weeks with the college games, and none of the games were close. Maybe one game was close. Of course, the pros ended up doing the same thing. Only one game was close. But I was happy to see competitive games this week, and I thought that was a pretty entertaining game. Like Chuck, it seemed like Notre Dame nor Penn State could get over the hump. So I guess one of them had to win this week. But I entertaining game, no complaints. Both teams fought hard. My hat goes off to Notre Dame, pulling it out.
I want first of all, thanks, Derek, for joining us. Boy, I wish I knew what he meant by the Tiger Woods syndrome.
Well, let's not go into that.
Okay.
But Derek Wilkerson is one of my closest friends.
Oh, cool.
Very knowledgeable.
Hey, Derek.
What's up, Derek? Glad you're watching the show. Got to get you on. I've been promising to get you on for years, and I haven't done it. My apology. All right. Ohio State defeats Texas 28-14. Ryan Day, the head coach of Ohio State, has taken a lot of crap this season because he lost to Michigan. Is he getting the crap
Well, he's
washed off of him?
Yes, no doubt, in my opinion.
Well, let me ask you, Big Ten guys, is it washed off of him, or does he have to win this next game?
No, I think it's washed off. I think he's
washed already.
Yeah, I think
okay.
So if he loses this national championship game, and there's no question to me in my mind that he's coming back to Ohio State. But if he had lost the game in this playoff run, I wasn't sure that he was coming back. So I think he's okay now. Look, I look at Ohio State, honestly, and I go, God, they're just very talented all over the place. Maybe the best money, best team money could buy. Because they won that game against Texas, and number 4, the receiver, he didn't even get targeted much in that game like he did in the game previously. So they just got a lot of talent on that team, in my opinion.
And they look like they're playing very well right now.
They really are.
Peaking at the right time.
Although Texas blew it, right? They tried to throw a lateral or whatever, a swing pass. But that was a big play. And they were getting ready to go in the score too. And that could have changed that thing a little bit.
Yeah, I think you're right. But watching it, it just seemed like Ohio State was better.
I agree with you, Larry.
Ohio State's a heck of a team. Heck of a team.
A lot of talent.
All right. Now, Monday, Notre Dame versus Ohio State in ATL. That's Atlanta, for those of you all who don't know what ATL stands for. Who wins that game? Larry?
I think Ohio State's going to win that game. They look like the stronger team. Even though Notre Dame seems well coached, I think they have a puncher's chance. But going back to smart money, I have to go with Ohio State.
All right. Chuck?
Ohio State. I think Ohio State will win that thing. And I bet you number 4 gets some targets in this game. I bet you that. The receiver.
All right. Let me tell you who wins that game.
Oh, that's right. Well, first of all, you got to say what state you're calling in from.
I'm calling in from Indiana. All right. I think for whatever reason, I'm not a big Notre Dame guy, because Notre Dame doesn't even acknowledge South Bend, the city in which they actually reside, because it's called Notre Dame, Indiana. But I have a feeling that this season Notre Dame will win the game, because this is the first time in years that Notre Dame looks like they have the big boys that they haven't had in previous years. I don't know. Maybe they've done some different kind of recruiting. Maybe NIL helps, but I just got a feeling that Notre Dame is going to find a way to beat Ohio State, and Ryan Day is going to be in some more trouble again. So Notre Dame wins the game.
I don't think either of those two teams have special quarterbacks, though. I think their quarterbacks are just okay, both of them. So,
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. All right. Now let's back to the NFL.
Well, before we go on, David, I've noticed a pattern of you picking these underdogs at every game. Pros.
Hey, we got to do a show.
Is that going to be your new nickname, underdog?
There's no need to fear. Underdog is here. All right. NFL, we got to review that. The number one story in the NFL, we're talking coaching. Deion Sanders possibly coaching the Dallas Cowboys. How do we feel about that? Is that hype? He's already talked to Jerry Jones, the owner of the Cowboys, about the possibility of coaching the Cowboys. Deion Sanders was a player on one of the Cowboys championship teams 30 years ago. What do we think, Larry? What do you think about Deion coaching?
Good for him
Cowboys?
if he gets the job. I mean, I think it's not going to matter unless they do a better job in the GM role, and I think they still have the same GM. So I'm wondering if he's going to sit down with Jerry Jones and, almost demand to be more a part of the decision-making process, but not sure.
Chuck.
Well, the two biggest marketeers is Jerry Jones and Deion Sanders. And so this looks like a marriage made in heaven, just from a marketing, money-making kind of perspective. I think Dallas has some problems in terms of their cap space, and is Dak really that good? They've got some issues that I don't think it's going to take them a minute to get over. So I think this keeps them in the news and so forth. I hope it happens because I'm a Commanders fan and I want that disaster to happen right in front of our eyes.
You're calling Deion going to Dallas a disaster?
I think it'll be a disaster.
Oh, you are non-Deion.
Yeah.
Well, let me say this. Your son, Charles Snowden III, plays for the Las Vegas Raiders. That's the team that I think it would be most appropriate to see Deion Sanders coaching in. Because he's always said if he ever went to the NFL, he'd love to coach his son. He's coached his son in high school, college, Jackson State, and Colorado. I think the opportunity to start Shedeur Sanders, his son, would be with the Las Vegas Raiders. Your thoughts, Charles Snowden II?
I think look, next year they will be paying 4 head coaches, right? Because they've let people go.
They got the money.
I think they're going to be serious. I think they're going to be really, really serious this time. I think the guy that they're targeting, especially with Tom Brady's input, is Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator of the Lions. And I don't know. I don't know if Shedeur, I don't know what people really think of Shedeur. I don't know. Will he be the first player picked in the draft? And by the way, Vegas has the 6th pick in the draft. So I don't know. I don't know if that's the right place for Deion.
Larry.
Deion going to Raiders. I mean, good for Deion wherever if he can get a job. I think he probably will be a decent coach. But if he goes to the Raiders have a lot to build. They need more players on that team, So I'm not sure how much impact a coach will have if the general managers are not doing a good job.
They don't have a general manager. They don't have a coach or general manager currently. The Raiders.
That's right. They fired him after the next day after they got rid of the coach.
Let me get a shout out to one of my colleagues, Patrick Lee. Hey, Patrick, how are you?
Patrick, how you doing?
Patrick, we've got some. Hey, David, we have some new names. You've got a following there in Indianapolis that have turned on.
They should follow me.
Look, here they come.
It's my buddy Jeffrey Clark, lifetime friend, and also an occasional panelist. We got him on the show. We're gonna get him on the show again.
Super
duper. All right, let's talk a little bit more about the coaching, and then we'll move on quickly to the NBA and get the heck out of here. Mike Vrabel has signed to coach the New England Patriots. Vrabel, great player for the New England Patriots when he was a player, coaching the Tennessee Titans for a number of years successfully. What do we think of Mike Vrabel as the new head coach of the New England Patriots? Larry, your thoughts?
I guess he'll do all right. It seemed like the previous coach Mayo really didn't have a real chance to do anything. I don't suspect the Patriots will be a lot better. They probably will get a little better, but Vrabel seemed to do a good job with previous stint as a coach. I expect him to do okay.
All right. And did you have a thought there, Chuck?
Yeah, he's like a Dan Campbell type. He'll install the culture. They'll give him a little more patience than they gave Mayo, and that's who they wanted. I mean, that's the bottom line. He wanted them. They wanted him.
Okay. All right, quickly. Mike McCarthy, finally out in Dallas. Was he treated fairly? This is a guy that has won a Super Bowl with Green Bay, number of 12-win seasons with the Cowboys. Was he just the odd man out? Should he have been fired? What was going on in Dallas? Chuck, let me start with you.
I think he wanted out. They said that they couldn't agree on the length of the contract. And I don't know what that whole shenanigans was with Jerry that week after the season ended and the week before he wouldn't let him talk to Chicago. But I think Mike McCarthy will land with a team this season. I don't know.
He's a good coach.
Maybe Chicago, but yeah.
He's a good coach who's been on the line. Larry, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think Chuck might be onto something. He might have wanted out of there because I think you have a limited amount of power in Dallas as a coach. And if they didn't extend him after winning 12 games in a season, it didn't seem likely that they would extend him now.
3 years in a row.
Yeah.
He went 12-5 3 years in a row.
Yeah.
That's pretty good, isn't it?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
I think it is.
Well, I'm sure they would take it this year.
All right. We're going to conclude our coaching discussion with a coach that I admire tremendously, who the media, and I'm part of the media, been in the media for many, many years, and now with the podcast media. Mike Tomlin, never a losing season in 18 seasons as a head coach. The talk is, should he be traded to another team? Mike Tomlin, one of the great coaches in the history of the NFL, and I mean the history of the NFL. Should Tomlin leave the Pittsburgh Steelers? Larry, your thoughts?
Well, he told the other teams to forget about it because he has a no trade clause in his contract. So as long as the Rooneys want him there, I think he'll be there. I think it's a big difference between talk radio and Pittsburgh because they're harping on that he hasn't won a playoff game in 8 seasons. And it's really kind of funny. Some people are bottom line like that, you win a championship or not. I think he's been overachieving, and he's going to be punished for overachieving because they could have very easily have not won 10 games any of those years, and they seem to win every year. I think he does the best with what he has.
Absolutely. Chuck?
I don't think anything changes either because he doesn't bottom out, and he doesn't have a quarterback really at this point. And I just think he'll be right there in the middle. They're just going to be in the middle. I don't know if the city of Pittsburgh or their fans are going to accept that. And I think after a while, people stop listening, right? The players stop listening. People stop listening. I don't know what's going to happen with Tomlin. I don't. He won't be if he leaves Pittsburgh, he won't be unemployed long.
It'd kind of be like Tony Dungy when he was fired from Tampa and immediately picked up by the Indianapolis Colts. And you know how much I feel about the Colts. All right. Let's go to the NBA very quickly. Larry, you are NBA correspondent and expert. How good are the Cleveland Cavaliers? By the way, Cavaliers were beaten by the Pacers last week. They stopped the Cavaliers' 12-game winning streak. How good are the Cavaliers?
Wait a minute, say the rest of it. They played again.
Well, they lost last night.
Yeah, they played again last night.
Okay, you got me.
Cleveland happened to win that game. So they won like 14 out of 15 now. So
wait a minute. Before we continue that thought, Mr. Voice of Reason, the Pacers won 6 straight games. They're playing pretty well. Anyway, go ahead.
They have a streak of -1 now. Give Cleveland credit by stopping the other great team, Oklahoma City's 15-game winning streak. And I think they play again tomorrow night, so tune into that. Cleveland, Cleveland and Boston are the class of the East. I mean, we're 35 games into it, so we have a sufficient sample size to show that they're for real. They've got a very deep team. The guy Mobley seems to finally have hit his stride this year. I guess he's still pretty young. He's probably only about 24. Seems like he's been in the league forever, but he is playing great. 2 7-footers that they played. Mobley, I can't remember the guy with the afro's name.
Allen.
Very well together. Team plays well together.
Allen.
And they're playing 9 or 10 guys playing great. I expect Boston probably can get them a run for sure. I like their chances against anybody else in the East, though.
All right, Chuck.
That victory you were talking about when OKC beat, when Cleveland beat OKC, Donovan Mitchell only had 11 points in that game. In other words, they've got a lot of balanced scoring on that Cleveland team, and they're really playing well. Shout out to Atkins, that coach that took that team over this year. He's done really well. And I'll tell you another team that's done. I mean, I'm not saying they're going to win the playoffs or the championship or anything like that, but Detroit is playing better too in the East. Detroit Pistons, and it's been a long time since we've said the Detroit Pistons are playing better. But
so, Chuck, let me make a point on that. Atkinson is doing a great job in Cleveland, but really Bickerstaff was their former coach. And that team was growing. They lost to Boston in the playoffs last year. They got better and better every year. Guess who he coaches this year? Detroit. And Detroit has they were like a team, I think this time last year, they won like 4 games or something like that. And they're above 500.
That's pretty
Kind of
impressive.
reminds me of Tony Dungy leaving Tampa Bay. Then the next coach comes in and wins the championship. Take nothing away from Atkinson.
Not only did the Bickerstaff do a good job with them, but they beat Orlando in the playoffs and got to the next round of the playoffs before they lost.
Right. They lost to Boston. That's it.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. You mentioned Boston. Boston, defending NBA champion. Are they still the favorite? Real quickly, guys. Larry.
I would say they're certainly one. I don't know if they're the favorite, but they're amongst the top teams. Oklahoma City and Cleveland are playing better this year, and those teams have beaten them this year. I don't know if they'll beat them in a series, though. Boston has I usually tend to think more experienced teams do better in the playoffs, and Boston is a little more experienced than both of those teams.
Chuck.
I think those are the three: OKC, Boston, Cleveland. Those three, right? But I keep an eye on the Knicks. Just keep an eye on them because I still kind of like the Knicks, although they haven't played great this year. Maybe they'll make another move, but those three are the three: OKC, Boston, and Cleveland, in my opinion.
You know what I'm happy about? You know what I'm thrilled about? Your son, LeBron James, is not being mentioned. The Lakers. I know. We're not mentioning them. And I'm just so happy.
You just did.
I did. Because
your boy saying this to his own self. They weren't even on their agenda.
That's his backhanded shot at him. By the way, you mentioned the Pacers, and you're right. The Pacers are playing a lot better. They're doing that without Halliburton really being like Halliburton the other day. Y'all knocked off somebody the other day, and Halliburton.
Oh, it was Cleveland.
And he got injured again.
He only played
He's always hurt.
He got injured
always
again.
hurt.
Yeah. First, I heard it was the same hamstring. Then last night they said it was his groin. Do you have
something's wrong with Halliburton all the time? Don't get me started because I'm starting to sour on Halliburton.
I already started. It started last year with that.
I know he makes way too much money for you.
$250 million guaranteed.
That's a lot of money, isn't it?
Well, I think.
A lot of money. Anyway, gentlemen, we are wrapping up this show. Do we have some closing comments? Larry, let me start with you.
None this week. I don't have any.
I have
any thoughts? All right, Chuck.
I have a quick one. And I don't like to be negative on closing comments, but I am this week. I'm sick and tired of hearing about Jimmy Butler. He's getting $48 million this year, $52 million next year. That's $100 million at 35 years old. What are you mad at, Jimmy? What is your problem? Shut up.
Amen. Amen. I got a closing comment. My comment is simply this. Let me make sure I get all my stuff ready to close this show out. Happy birthday, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He would have been 96 years old today. On Monday, when we normally celebrate his birthday, another happening is going on and will kind of diminish the attention that should be given to Dr. King. But today is his actual birthday, January 15th, 1929. One of the great orators, one of the great leaders, one of the great men of conscience in the history of the world, Dr. King's birthday. And with that, we close the show. Gentlemen, it's been real. Chuck, great to see you. Larry, great to see you.
You too.
And right here in Indianapolis, I'm David Burnett. Good night.